Was there an Adam? Was there an Eve? Or did we evolve from what we conceived? Either way, we got what we needed when the sun shone down on the Garden of Eden.
Don't you know we're gonna have a Solartopia, Solartopia, Solartopia. Don't you know we're gonna have a Solartopia all over God's green world.
An honor and it's a joy to be with everybody. And our election protection work is more important than ever. I'm going to summarize it at the top of every hour just to make sure we're all on the same page and this gets drilled into our head. We are trying to win the election protection trifecta in 2020. We need to protect the voter rolls and add to them. And we do have Andrea Miller in our group who has developed a template for protecting the voter rolls and adding people to them. It's an amazingly impressive piece of work she's done. She has staff meetings on Monday, but she does join our webinars on Thursdays. We have vote by mail, which is complicated, but we have ascertained in general that it is potentially a great way to vote, a game changer. We expect nearly all states have allowed absentee ballots, which generally has run about 5% of the population this year. And we have had 5 states, Utah, Colorado, Oregon, Washington, and Hawaii, which have been doing 100% vote by mail very successfully. This year, because of COVID, we will have somewhere between 40 and 80% of the population voting by mail. And because so many states are doing it in this volume for the first time, it is very challenging. And I have put out an article at Reader Supported News, which has also been picked up by BuzzFlash and others, laying out about the 20 demands of vote by mail that we're all going to have to deal with. That's the second part of the trifecta. The third is the vote count. John Brakey has pioneered nationwide the use of digital ballot imaging. 80% or more of the precincts in the United States have digital ballot imaging machines. And I had a long conversation with Jennifer Tanner about this earlier. We are, the third leg of the trifecta is to protect those digital images. And in our last call, we talked about John Brakey's lawsuit in the state of Florida requiring, which is federal law, but requiring all precincts, all counties to preserve those digital ballot images. We have had the bad experience in 2004 in Ohio, where we won a federal court case. The counties were required by federal law to obey the federal law and preserve all ballot-related images for materials for 22 months. And 56 of the 88 counties in Ohio pitched all of it, threw it away in direct violation not only of standing federal law, but of a federal court mandate. And we want to make sure that that does not happen in 2020. And part of that, of course, also is to deal with unusable, unworkable deadlines for recounts. One of the great things about digital ballot imaging and vote by mail is we get the majority of ballots, the vast majority of ballots on paper, which has not been the case up until this year, and that they be preserved for recounts. Okay, now we have added a demand, or request or idea, which was pioneered by the Atlanta Hawks, which is that in these major counties, in all counties, that the backup places to vote in person, which will happen nonetheless. You can have 99.9% vote by mail, but you do need a place to go if you did not get your ballot, if you have challenges with registration, if you have special needs. We always will need a place to vote in person. The state of Ohio, the right-wing legislature in Ohio has now mandated by law that all the 88 counties in Ohio will have a single place, just one place to vote. And that means that we need to protect and to make sure that the place that people go to vote is decent, that it's protected, that allows people a fair access, because we saw in Wisconsin and elsewhere that when you have places to vote that are not sufficient, you wind up with huge lines. In Ohio, this spring, there was only one place to vote in central Ohio, in Franklin County, which has 1.2 million people in it. And it was a completely obscure, abandoned Kohl's department store. Nobody knew where it was. There was no parking. It was a nightmare. So what the Atlanta Hawks have done, and we wholeheartedly endorse this, is that they've offered their arena in downtown Atlanta, which seats 20,000 plus people, to be the voting center in Atlanta, in that county. And the advantages are obvious. That it's indoors. It's got plenty of room for social distancing. You go to the door, you get a number, you go in, you find a place to sit. Masks will be mandatory. We can have, well, maybe nobody will agree on the music, but there could be food services. There will be, of course, restrooms. They'll be out of the weather. Guns will be banned, so they will not be facing the Klan outside. There's plenty of parking. Everybody knows where the arenas are. That's why we're advocating. Now, there will be some counties outside of Ohio where they'll have more than one place to vote, and we want those to be, high school and college stadiums, so that people know where they are. They'll have a decent place to vote. So that has been added to our trifecta. It's part of the voting by mail syndrome. And our strategy is to have coordinators in every state. This is not a national election. This is a series of statewide elections, because every state, the Constitution gives the states great latitude in setting how elections are done. And so every state has different election laws. We want people in every state that the grassroots can call and find out what the law is, and to help pressure county voting boards to do the right thing. And we want people in every county, grassroots activists in every county, in coordinating with the election boards, joining the election boards at some places, because we would guess that with the pandemic, traditionally people who have worked elections are older people. Many of them, probably most of them, will not be election active in the administration of elections this year, and we are guessing that many election boards will officially welcome people on these boards. So we want people to be completely educated and active in this trifecta in protecting the voter rolls, protecting vote by mail, guaranteeing a vote count through the digital ballot images that John is suing over, and we'll revisit John Brakey on that issue as the call proceeds. So that is the overview, and I'm going to bore you all every time with giving you overviews, because new people join this, and we need to drill this into people's heads. I've talked to Joel Siegel, who's been on the phone nonstop, and he says, basically, he can say it for himself, that people just don't know that this election is under attack. Even very knowledgeable people, or otherwise knowledgeable, it has not occurred to them that even if Donald Trump is down 20 points in the polls, if they strip people from the voter rolls, which Greg Palast has written about, if they mess with vote by mail, which Donald Trump ceaselessly talks about, and if they pitch the digital ballot images and have unworkable deadlines, we are not going to have a reliable democratic, small d democratic election. Okay? And so what we are trying to do is recruit people to serve as state coordinators and we really want lawyers, by the way, people who really know the law, that anybody can call and say, hey, what's with this in these backwater counties, and can really enforce the law and pressure the local voting boards to do the right thing. And we only have 3.5 months left to this election, right? July to August, September, October, November. That's 3.5 months basically, and that we have got to preserve this election and win the election protection trifecta if we are going to have a small d democratic outcome in this election. We are technically nonpartisan in this. We do take 501c3 money, and we are critical of the Democratic Party for stripping and flipping their primaries, and then the Republicans who do it mostly in the fall. Okay. Mike, is there anybody on the call that you need to identify that we don't know who they are before we proceed here? I think I know pretty much everybody.
Well, we have somebody is listed as call-in user 01. If you'd like to give us a more human name, that would be great. Call-in user number 1.
Okay. And I see we're joined by Egberto Willies, the great media maven. How are you, Egberto? Good to see you. I think I pretty much, oh, Lotus, you have not been on any calls before. Lotus Yifeng, if you will identify yourself, I know you from San Francisco. It was great to meet you up there. Kenny Bruno's with us, Regina Sneed, but I've not met you before. But as long as we know who everybody is, that's great. So let's start. We do have some victories to celebrate. I want to congratulate the football team in Washington, D.C. for finally getting rid of that awful name. They have not come up with a new name. I suggest they call their football team the Election Protection Activists.
I think that's that might be on the short list, but I don't know if that's what they're going to do.
But this has been a big, big fight. I think the baseball team in Cleveland will also be changing their name, which is a great thing. And I would expect the football team, the baseball team in Atlanta, and the football team in Kansas City will also follow suit. This is a big deal. A lot of people have been fighting for this for a long time, and it does show that we do win these victories. We've also, and Mimi Kennedy, I want you to jump in on this from LA. I watched Mom last night. Mimi Kennedy is a star of Mom. It's a wonderful TV show if anybody wants to see it. But my understanding now is that the state of California has agreed to mail all registered voters a ballot. Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah, I was just alerted to this. Ray Lutz, thank you for that. July 11th, it was in the paper that there has been a bill passed so that the Republican lawsuit against Gavin Newsom's directive that all California voters should get mail ballots, that was being litigated by, I think, Darrell Issa and by the Republican Party. Well, the legislature stepped in and they passed law that everybody in California should get a mail ballot this year due to COVID-19. So the Republican lawsuits are moot because it's law. It's not just an overstepping of the rules by the governor of California. That's a win, a big win for progressives.
It is a big win. And unfortunately, as you'll recall, we did not win that in Texas. The governor of Texas went to the U.S. Supreme Court and said that we do not want to allow absentee ballots to people who are merely claiming fear of the virus, right? And the Supreme Court 5-4, I think it was 5-4, ruled that Texas does not have to send absentee ballots or vote by mail ballots to everyone that they otherwise choose. And, you know, Texas is now in play in this election. It was not considered a swing state a few months ago, but since the Democrats have decided to play rope-a-dope with Trump and not put up a candidate, apparently, you know, this is a big deal in Texas against us. But to have the biggest state in the country now mail ballots to everyone without any other requirement that you registered. Is that right, Mimi? Do you have to fill in? Do you have to send in an application in California, or just being registered is sufficient?
No, just being registered and probably being an active voter. But, you know, as of August 5th, when no one can be purged without it being a federal crime to have been purged, if you're on the voter rolls in California, you can, I mean, go and check. If you're not there, register. This is the voters calendar. If you are there, check that all your data is correct and check to see if you're active or inactive. I am not sure whether the mandate to send a mail ballot to every voter in California means active or inactive. I suspect it will be active. It's up to the voter then to go and make sure. The only thing you'd have to opt into, I suspect, is a change of your status from inactive to active if you saw such a thing on your registration record. But this is now automatic. These mail ballots go to everybody, not an application, a mail ballot.
So this is a huge deal. This means that any other state, you can go in and to Michigan, Wisconsin, Georgia, Iowa, and say, hey, look, the biggest state in the country, admittedly it's California, but the biggest state in the country is now mailing ballots to all registered voters without an additional application. Now that's a huge deal because in Ohio, they're requiring that you get a postcard, you send in an application, and then maybe you'll get your ballot. So this is 10% of the country, plus the 5 that have already been doing vote by mail. So, you know, there's no, you know, Trump is yelling and screaming about this, but there is no reason on earth why everybody in every state can't flat out advocate for vote by mail where all registered voters automatically get a ballot. There is simply no, Kenny's asking, is the California ballot possible in Pennsylvania, Florida, Wisconsin, Michigan? Yes. It would take a vote of the legislature. The problem is that the Republican legislatures do not want to do this. Legally, there is absolutely no barrier. You know, Texas has gotten away with saying, oh, we don't want to do this. And because states have such leeway, they can say, we don't want to do this. But if you're an advocate in another state, you can say, look, you know, we've got these 5 states that have been doing vote by mail very successfully. Now we have the biggest state in the country doing it very, you know, hopefully successfully. This is a big advocacy situation. Okay, so Mimi, thank you for winning that.
Hey, Harvey.
Well,
Harvey,
a lot of other people, not me.
Yes.
It says you're muted now, but I think you can hear me.
Yeah.
I imagine with legislation comes some sort of shared state costs. In other words, the counties are not being mandated to do something that would cost them extra money. Also, California, due to legislation some years ago, moved into a vote center model in many places, meaning that if, along with mail voting, we have this vote center thing where, yes, they're fewer than polling places, but they're open for early voting. So what will happen when we are asking for more mail balloting, we're asking from the federal government to let more money be there for these counties to do it, because otherwise both sending out the mail ballots and opening their polling places, they are saying that's an unfunded mandate from the federal government. So that's where you run into complications that we as activists need to anticipate while we lobby for this state by state and from the federal government. I'd love to talk to the more well-funded organizations, but why we could do it in California is that the counties are kind of set up to be able to do this, and they just said everybody has to do it this year because of COVID.
Okay,
I just didn't know. Okay.
You raised an issue. Someone else wanted to talk. Let me jump in here. You raised an issue that did not appear in any of the press coverage, which is who's going to pay for it. Now the question then becomes, and this we have to deal with as advocates, is it cheaper to do vote by mail than it is to run voting centers? You know, you're relying on volunteer labor at the voting, multiple voting centers. If you have 1 per county, it strikes me that should be cheaper, but I don't know for sure. So I would like to know in LA, are we all going to vote? If we have to go down there, are we all going to vote in the Staples Center? And yes, who's speaking?
I've heard, Harvey, this is Ray.
Yes.
I've heard that the election officials actually like vote by mail because they think it's cheaper because they don't have to print so many different types of ballots. At least that's the way they know exactly what the voter's supposed to get. And then they deliver it to them. But you know, the volunteers, they do have to pay them. So it isn't like that's free labor at the voting centers. But I did want to mention one other thing that's, I think, pretty important about this same thing you were just talking about. And that is with this full vote by mail going in California, and this kind of applies to other states too, whoever does this, is that at least in California, they're not auditing the later received vote by mail. So if everybody is voting vote by mail, what people tend to do is wait till the last minute or last day or two to vote, or wait till the very last day, or mail it in, and then they have to wait for it to come in California. And so there's a big giant amount of vote by mail coming in at the very end. In California, we had a lawsuit trying to get them to audit the later vote by mail ballots, and we won Then they changed the law, making it okay. And so now we have a letter going to the governor and to, I put it in the chat, so please take a look.
Yes.
We're looking for people to endorse this letter. We're asking the governor and the legislature to audit all vote by mail ballots, to treat them in the audit. And I wish you'd add one more leg to your stool there, Sluggo, is that we need to watch and audit the elections at the end, not just ask for ballot images, but look them over and look at the audits that they perform, because they're self-audits. These are election officials auditing themselves, and we have to be there watching, or they just come out of the room and say everything is okay.
Okay, that's a very good point, and I'll add that to all our stuff.
So this letter is, I'm going to be sending it out hopefully by Wednesday, and so it is up for for people to endorse or comments on it. Please look at the chat thread. And then there's one other thing, and maybe you want to decide when to include this in the agenda, but a while back, I said I would give you guys and everybody a game plan for the most important counties, the most important states, and how to handle our focus. And so that I also put into the chat thread. So within those states that we targeted, we're looking at the top counties in those states, and it doesn't take all the counties. So in any one state, like Arizona, there's only 3 top counties. In other counties, it's usually the Pareto principle, 80-20 rule. So it only takes 20% of the counties to get 80% of the vote. So once you've gotten to 80% of the vote, you probably don't have to do the other,
Okay.
counties.
Okay, very good, Ray. And
Harvey, just hold on a second. I'm getting inundated by questions that I cannot answer while I'm also engineering the call. So what I'd like to do is, as soon as possible, if we could pause and start going through some of these questions that are piling up faster than.
Are they in the chat, or are they just to you?
They're in the chat to me, and there are also people are raising their hands.
Okay, so if you will text me who
Can't do it. Can't do it while I'm running the call.
Okay, so I'm going to ask one more question, and then I guess you'll repeat the questions. Okay, Mike.
Best I can.
The question is, in California, when do is the requirement for an absentee ballot that maybe Steve Rosenfeld, maybe you know this. The absentee ballot, this went all the way to the Supreme Court in Wisconsin this spring. Does the ballot, the mail-in ballot, does it have to be received on Election Day, or does it have to be postmarked by Election Day?
I can answer that.
Okay, Mimi, go ahead.
It needs to be postmarked by Election Day, but it can be received up to, initially they said 3 days after Election Day. I think they've stretched that. 5 days after Election Day. This was something.
17. Now 17.
17 days after the election. Initially, I was horrified by this because why not wait and see how many fake things you need? But I understand why they're doing it now. The problem, as Ray has said it, and I see a question in the chat, what do you mean? I'm trying to understand about the audits. Anything that arrives from Election Day on in a mail ballot envelope is not going to be included in the audit of the machine count. In other words, all those ballots are counted by a computer, and the computer software accuracy is never audited. How did they get this? The election officials complained to the legislature that people like Ray LUTZ were making them do the random selection for auditing by hand of all the batches, all the precincts, too late. They were saying, we need to know our scanners are accurate long before 10 days after the election. So we're not going to include any of those late arriving mail ballots, or for that matter, provisionals, in the random selection. Those will be counted later on scanners. They will never be looked at by a hand count. Now, knowing this, if I were a fraudster, I would just say, hey, wait until 5 days after the election when they start scanning those ballots, insert that fraction magic, and those will be the results. However, there are now so many more mail ballots that are going to be coming in late, and maybe provisionals although that clash at the polls
Okay.
has been mitigated in California. I'm just saying the whole election could be computerized without an audit in California now. And that's what we're working on. That's what Ray's explaining.
Okay, so when we advocate in our other states, this needs to be taken into account. Are the because this, like I say, went to the Supreme Court in Wisconsin, and you have to beware that what happened in Wisconsin, they did not have a clear answer as to what ballots would be counted and what wouldn't, because a lot of ballots came in without a postmark. And it was not clear, it was left to the county officials to determine what, if they were going to count ballots that came in after Election Day that did not have postmarks. So you had a situation, and some of these were really big counties. You had a situation in Wisconsin where the entire election could have been determined by a single election supervisor board in a county deciding whether or not to count ballots that were not postmarked. And this was, you could say it was the fault of the Postal Service, and we know the Postal Service is going to be in chaos. So this is something to look for. I'm going to read through the chats, Mike, so I can maybe spare you.
Also, Harvey, in Ohio, it has to be postmarked a week ahead of the election.
That's insane. They should be sued for that. That really should be a lawsuit, Bob. I know you're not doing anything. I mean, I know your business help, but that to require a ballot to be postmarked a week before the election, that's ridiculous. So I don't know, and maybe somebody else knows that. This is something that really has to be watched. The other thing that has to be, one of the other things that has to be watched is the deadlines on the recounts. I had a long conversation with Jennifer about this. Twice recounts have been stopped in Florida. Once, of course, in 2000, when the Supreme Court infamously intervened and made Bush president and stopped the recount. And of course, Kavanaugh, now on the Supreme Court, was a party to that. And then just recently in Florida, they stopped recounts on the governor's and senators' races and completely changed the outcome. The U.S. senator currently, this horrible guy, whose name blessedly escapes me, is in the U.S. Senate because they stopped the recount on his election because there was an unworkable deadline. And Steve Rosenfeld knows a lot about this. Steve, you want to say a quick word about these deadlines on the recounts?
Well, the big picture is that the laws, the post-election date timetables involve a series of steps. They call it the canvassing process, which is reconciling ballots where the voter intent is not clear. And it moves to, then there could be challenges by candidates or parties. If it's within a certain margin, 0.5% or 1/4%, it automatically goes to a recount. Recounts are not necessarily recounting all the votes. It really varies state by state, but and this has to be done within certain timetables. It ranges from the Friday after the Tuesday in states like South Carolina to, like as we were mentioning here before, with California, it runs out several weeks. The big fear is that when people move, is that these laws and these timetables were written before COVID. So the volume of paper itself is going to really push back, the times these unofficial results come in tranches, and therefore the clock may just run out if the recount process even begins. So I'll just leave it there. So
this happened in Florida in the middle of the recount. They stopped and they wound up with.
Well, that's not exactly right, but I won't get into the details with that. I mean, right. What happened was they couldn't finish the recounts in a couple counties, given the machines they had in the time that was allotted. So it went back, it reverted to the first election night unofficials.
So we want, as election protection activists, we want to look at these deadlines in every state and push them back as far as we possibly can.
And it hasn't happened yet, by the way. No state legislature that I'm aware of. There have been some governor's orders, but no legislature. In fact, legislatures have been going the opposite direction in red states.
Yes.
They're making the timetables tighter, not longer.
Right. It's ridiculous because we have a situation, and remember, we're talking about recounts here. Thank you, Steve. We're talking about recounts here where if we have digital ballot imaging, as John Brakey's advocated, and it's in 80% of the states, we're going to get a result pretty quick. But on the other hand, to do recounts with that many paper ballots, it can take forever. And so these deadlines are the enemies of a good election process. Okay, in the chat, Deborah Cohn has said that her head is exploding and she is craving sugar. So if anybody can help Deborah, that would be great. Jed Parker says there's going to be 1,000 vote centers in LA County. I'm going to bet not. But, you know, we'll see. I mean, I don't think they can sustain 1,000 vote centers.
Well, if I can say that this is what we heard from Dean Logan last week at our meeting. We know already that they can't sustain LA County's election process itself, but they know that we're looking at them, and we have some motion on some of the supervisors to apply oversight that they should have been doing all these years anyway. We don't have a final number on what they're going to be putting out, but it's around 1,000 that he's talking about this time.
Well, look, I will seriously doubt that they can do that.
Well, they couldn't do it with 970 last time.
Right. So I think Deborah Cohn said the problem with the Staples Center is traffic. One of the things we also want to advocate is that they stay open 4 days. We want everything open Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday. When I did get my ballot in Valley Village in the mail, and I marked it, and I took it in on Sunday. And it was no wait. They were glad to see me. And you know, what part of our election protection trifecta is to encourage people, A, that the vote centers stay open, B, open on Saturday, and B, you know, the joke is that Saturday is for the Christians, Sundays for the Jews, and then Mondays for everybody else. So, you know, we got to deal with, we want to be encouraging everybody to vote early and to be accommodated in voting centers starting on Saturday or even earlier, right? That's possible. Okay.
In LA County, they're actually open earlier, but we're working to get decent oversight on all of that stuff. We're just going to apply pressure after pressure after pressure.
Okay. Marjorie has asked a question about auditing. Let's return to that next week, because auditing is an eye roller, and I want to develop a clear agenda item for that. Hetty in Minnesota says that they got the ballots for primaries in the mail. That's good. So postmarked by election day, those laws are all over the map. We really need to know the postmark law, and you know, in Ohio, I mean, to ask to have a ballot sent in postmarked a week beforehand, that's absolutely outrageous. So Mike has asked, please post the questions on the chat, not just to Mike, and that we got to procedurally, that's got to do that. Postmark this, Virginia Martin, yes. Postmark the date is determined by the state. How do we convince the post office to put postmarks on all mail? We just got to remind them to do that. But you know, because if it comes in without a postmark, I think it becomes up to the discretion of the people at the election board. We don't want to do that. Washington from Tim White is postmarked on election day. Oregon is received by 8 p.m. on election day. We have to force the Chicago board to get the postmark on in. That's right, from Dr. Laura. The Postal Service being sabotaged. This is a big problem we're going to face coming to the up there. Patricia Grecian says yes. Postal Service is under great stress, and it's being sabotaged, says Justin LeBlanc. This is a big problem that we're going to face. Gloves at the Postal Service, yes. Push the governor, Dr. Laura, that's in Illinois, to certify. Give them 3 to 4 weeks. I will note, by the way, the primaries in New York, they took a long time to certify, and nobody died. It was perfectly fine, and we did get results. Alberto, yes, there must, if we do these arenas, there's got to be free transportation. And why not? You know, bus service, private pickups for people with special needs. That's something we can do. Steve says there's serious efforts underway to recruit thousands of poll workers for the fall. Let's advocate that, absolutely. Auditing, says Ray, is not an eye roller, but let's deal with auditing in detail next week. We need some great lawyers to overturn the Ohio vote by mail. We have Bob. He's a great lawyer, and he's won many things about that. We're gonna, oh yeah, we want to have drop boxes, and that's important. And of course, they have to be protected. A lot of the drop boxes now have cameras, so that we'll know who drops the bombs in there. But drop boxes are essential, and they can be in neighborhoods. There's no reason not to. So, Emily Levy, your hand is raised. Go ahead. Emily?
Yep, it just takes a moment to unmute.
Yeah.
So you had talked earlier in the call, and it was in the agenda, about getting state-by-state organizers, and that's related to what we're doing at Scrutineers, and I'm wondering if there's going to be an opportunity to talk about that.
Go ahead right now. Although actually Alan Minsky may join us. PDA, Progressive Democrats of America, is doing a lot of that. But go ahead while we got you. Go ahead. We don't want to lose you. So go ahead and say this.
So thank you. So we on Saturday have a kickoff event at 10 o'clock Pacific, 1 o'clock Eastern, where we're kicking off our National Election Protection Program. And a big part of that is going to be training people to do the kinds of things that we've been talking about on this call. So to observe the auditing, to advocate for the policies we want, to try to get a hold of ballot images and use those to provide public oversight, to get people to photograph the poll tapes, all those sorts of election protection activities that we're talking about. And we've got the infrastructure to have people organized in statewide groups and be able to have discussions in their groups and post documents in their groups and communicate with each other via our app and private messaging. And we want to team with organizations that are already working in different states, because we've got volunteers who may be able to add to what you're doing, and the tools that we have in the scrutineers.org site may make it easier for you to do the work that you're already doing. So if those of you here or listening to this who haven't joined Scrutineers yet, I encourage you to come do that and see what we've created. A lot of the folks on this call already are members. So if you're interested in helping be a coordinator of a state or a moderator of a state group, you can reach out to me. And if you have an organization that's already working, you'd like to talk about using our tools, you can contact me. And then the other thing is, if you are interested in finding other people in your state to work with, that's something that we can help you do. So I hope that you'll all come on Saturday. The information about that event is on our homepage. And we're not trying to duplicate other people's efforts, we're trying to amplify them. So I know I keep saying, come join us, and it's because what we're about is helping you do your work more effectively, reach more people, communicate better with each other, and share resources. So I hope that you'll come check that out. It's a membership site that's all about communicating with each other. The trainings that we offer will be available recorded after they happen live, so people who join later will still be able to receive the training.
Okay, wonderful, Emily. And you're working in conjunction with Progressive Democrats of America. Alan Minsky hopefully will join us after 5 or after 6 to talk further about what they're doing.
Let me just say, we are a nonpartisan organization, so we welcome people to join from any or no political party.
Okay, Steve Rosenfeld has posted the new Ohio law, which is insane. Thank you, Emily.
Well, let's be clear what they're doing. For the first time, they're sending applications out. But what they're saying, if your ballot comes in late, that they're not counting it unless you send it out a week before the election, because the mail service is running 10 to 14 days. So to get it within that 30-day period, they're arguing the mail service, you could still drop it off in person. You could go down. The old deadline was the Monday before the Tuesday election. But now, unless, if it comes in late, it's on you unless you postmarked it the Tuesday before or earlier.
God, that's got to be illegal. I mean, I would love to see a legal challenge to that, but you know, we'll see. Bob, thank you. And Joel, is Joel Siegel on the line? Joel, can we hear you? Okay, so I want to emphasize Emily Levy's organizing efforts are incredibly advanced and important. And Emily, if you will put the links to your next event up there, and the link, of course, to your organization, that's great.
I will put I'll put the link to our homepage, which has the information about the event. It's for members only, so people need to join, which costs a one-time fee of $1.99 to join scrutineers. And I just want to say my last name is pronounced Levy for future reference.
Okay.
Thanks.
Hey, Harvey?
Yes, Joel Siegel. Okay, so Joel, you're in North Carolina, and I want you to follow Emily, who's doing this great organizing, to talk about the organizing that you are doing in North Carolina as kind of a template. Because we're talking specifically, we're going to go back to some of the states, but Emily opened this line of talk. So in particular, if you will tell us what you are doing to build the coordinated effort in North Carolina so that people get an idea of where we're going elsewhere in all the states. Okay.
Yeah, and thank you, Harvey, and everyone listening. Is Cynthia Perry of Alliance for More Progressives, is she still on the call?
Cynthia, are you with us? I saw her before. It usually takes a while to unmute.
Okay, I'm here.
Yes. Okay,
Okay, hey, Cynthia, let me, what I'm gonna do is give a thumbnail sketch of what's happening. First of all, the purge in our state, I think it was over, according to Greg Powell's new book, it was over 500,000, which is really incredible. That's number one, purge. Number two, what we're trying to do is get a coordinated effort. We have 100 counties here. We're building a very serious coalition. It's mainly black and brown, and of course progressive whites, but we want to put pressure on the county board of elections. We want to demand a few things. We want to know how are they going to conduct the vote. We want to know about early voting. We want to know about, it's always been a problem in North Carolina. Actually, everything's a problem in North Carolina when it comes to voting. We also want to know, well, how are they going to count provisional ballots, because they're very good at, throwing them away. How are they going to count absentee ballots, because a lot of times they don't count them either. Then in the time of COVID, are they going to wait outside for 6 to 8 hours and contract COVID like they did in Wisconsin? Or can they maybe hold an election in the Charlotte? We have a lot of college campuses where they could actually hold the elections in a stadium. But I'm going to use one word, and I say this in a good way, and that's fragmentation. The biggest challenge that we face as a voting election protection movement is fragmentation, where we got a lot of groups who are doing great work, but we don't know each other. So what Cynthia is going to tell you about, we're trying to find out who all those groups are. Then we're going to start having Zoom calls that Mike Hirsch is, thank you, Mike. And so this is going to involve, at the highest levels, I'm trying to get the Attorney General, state legislators, city council members, Democratic Party activists, voting rights activists, so we can get on the same page. But it's a lot of work, but Cynthia is one of our superstars. So Cynthia, you want to talk about, what AMP is doing and your involvement?
Yeah, I'd like to take just a few minutes to talk about that. And thanks so much for allowing me to speak. I am with ampamerica.org, and that's the Alliance of Moral Progressives. And we are a nonpartisan organization as well. We've been working with Joel on the statewide election protection movement, as well as we've been working on another important related focus, and that's the fight against voter suppression. So if I could just take a minute to tell you a little bit about AMP, because AMP you'll be hearing a lot about us, we'll be involved, and I'll take just a second so that you can become acquainted with AMP. We're an organization that formed a little over 3 years ago. There was 7 founding individuals, 6 of which are still with the organization. And developing, we wanted to do something that would make a difference. And then developing our beliefs, missions, and all of that. Our mission has 3 key points. that direct us, and that's education, coordination, and collaboration. And in those areas, the work we've done, a very small sampling, we've educated in healthcare, coordinated in housing initiatives, and collaborated on a very significant effort, and that's the Charlotte Clean Energy Resolution. Now, I want to go into talking a little bit about what AMP is doing, and Harvey talked earlier about working with Andrea Miller. We are currently working with Andrea Miller, so I'd like to tell you what we're doing, because that's an extremely significant effort, because her organization is putting a little focus right now, putting big focus on North Carolina right now. So, which is the reason why we joined with that organization. The voting rights protection and participation is AMP's foundational values. So that's where we are just tunnel focused on the, as a result of that, tunnel focus on the November 3rd election. In that regard, we became aware of Angela's organization, which is the Center for Common Ground, and their initiative, or campaign, which is Reclaim Our Vote. And that is what we are working with. We joined with the Reclaim Our Vote, and as part of that, we are hosting, with Angela will be the keynote speaker, we're hosting a webinar event on July 22nd from 7 p.m. to 8:30. And the purpose of that event will be to introduce the campaign, and this is throughout North Carolina, to introduce the campaign, to educate, motivate, and engage to get as many organizations as possible, their members and other individuals throughout the state, to work on the campaign to punch through the serious voter suppression tactics that are practiced here. Now, I don't know, I'm just coming in today, so I don't know how much you know about Reclaim Our Vote. If I could just take a second, Harvey, how much have you guys?
Listen, here's what we're going to do.
Mm-hmm.
I had figured at the end of the call we would do networking to all the different organizations. But since we're on this stream now, let's talk about this for a minute, and let me come back to you. We are the Grassroots Emergency Election Protection Coalition. Now, Joel and I had this discussion earlier, as well as Jennifer. There are groups all over the country now that are working, that say they're working on election protection. And we're sure they are, but we don't know what people are doing. And Joel has complained about fragmentation and being in silos. So in this call, if you know, any of you know, other organizations that are working on election protection, let's compile that list, and we will, I will, and Joel and other people, we will try and find out what they're doing and get them on the next week's call. Because, this has become very, thankfully, fashionable. This is part of the work that we've succeeded in doing. People understand there's a real danger that this election will be stolen. And so we have people all over the country now working, raising money, putting out PR, but we don't know exactly what they're doing. And not that we need to monitor anybody, but we know, I don't believe in avoiding duplication. I don't mind it when people duplicate work, but it would be really helpful to know. For example, I just got an email, a chat here about the fact that Public Citizen for Marjorie, the Public Citizen held a really good webinar on how to, an awesome call about how to call your local election officials and ask them to call the legislatures to vote to support COVID funding for elections. They recorded the call and sent it around. So we'll have to look for that and find it. We've heard that LeBron James is going to do election protection work, but we don't know. We know that Stacey Abrams is working on it. We don't know exactly what she's doing. So we're not looking for uniformity or lockstep. We just want to try and know as much as possible so that we can coordinate. So that's why I'm glad that you have raised what your organization is doing. And what we need to do, we'll send to me and to Mike all the names of the organizations and the contacts, and we can put them up around the organization and post them on the websites so that we can coordinate. Does that make sense? Anybody object to that?
No, Harvey, this is Cynthia. Can I ask a question? You're looking for organizations that are actually working on election protection, because there are several that I have found that are working on election protection, like Democracy NC, and then there's another organization that's working on an initiative where they will have a call center with legal people staffed in a call center. So
that is a great thing we want to do. Yes. And it has to be in every state. So when we talk about the coordinators for states, we could interface with them, with the ACLU, with the Brennan Center.
Yeah.
We need to be in touch. And like I say, duplication can be a good thing. Mimi has just sent the link to the article was posted on Common Dreams about the calendar that Mimi and Steve Rosenfeld and Alan Minsky have put together, the voter calendar. So that's a great thing also. So we are posting everything and anything at Scrutineers. We're sending it to them, and at freepress.org, Bob Petrakis' website in Columbus that has a portal, and Steve Caruso is posting everything there that we send him with these links. So it's going to be hard to keep up, but you know there are tremendous resources out there. So Cynthia, you were going to talk about another group real quick.
Well, no, I was just telling you about a couple of groups that I will send to Emily, I guess, that are, I mentioned Democracy NC. It's just that organization NC works in NC, but Democracy is across the nation. So, but anyway, what I was going to talk about is our efforts, and I don't know if you're there yet, where AMP is working with Angela's group on Reclaim Our Vote.
Okay.
To talk about that.
No, I don't know Reclaim Our Vote, and I'm sure it sounds like, what do they do?
Okay. Reclaim Our Vote. Well, as you know, Angela is the founder of Center for Common Ground.
Okay.
And
Andrea Miller.
Andrea Miller, yes.
Andrea, yes.
Yeah, Andrea Miller, right. And
You had her on, Harvey.
Yeah, we
She
did.
was on this call.
Yeah, we know Andrea. There's no need to go over that
go
right
ahead.
now. But
Okay. So the 2018, they brought on a campaign that's called Reclaim Our Vote, and Reclaim Our Vote is an initiative where they work across the country, but they target 6 southern states where voter suppression is historically been practiced, and those states are like Alabama, Arizona, Georgia, Mississippi, Texas, and North Carolina. So as a result of their North Carolina focus, we joined with them.
Okay. And that is Andrea Miller's group, which is Andrea Miller's group is also known as People Demanding Action.
That's another organization that she has.
Okay.
There are 2 organizations she has, and a campaign that is the Reclaim Our Vote campaign.
All right. Good. Okay. Thank you. Now, we also have, and thank you very much for all that,
Yeah.
we also have Audit USA, which is John Brakey. Now, John has presented his lawsuit in Florida to prevent the election boards from erasing, who can make this up, from erasing the digital ballot images. And John, how has your your suit proceeded? And I want you also, we had a conversation about Michigan, which really blew my mind, because Michigan has a Democratic governor and a Democratic Senate. Why don't you start with that? Democratic governor, Democratic Secretary of State. Tell us what you found in Michigan.
Well, I've been up there twice. The first time, my lawyer and me went up there to meet with other lawyers and over the Secretary of State's office, because, you know, I decided in Michigan to let my lawyers go first, and their lawyers are, you know, people he's worked with for years, and they're very friendly with the Secretary of State. One of them ran for Congress, and they all know each other. And he went in there, and finally, after a couple of months of negotiation, they said something very, very strange. They said, you know, we're not going to save the ballot images because it would take a long time and it would cause long lines, which is just like crazy talk, okay? You know,
now this is from a Democratic,
you know, it's
that from a Democratic Secretary of State.
Her office, but you know, we don't know so much as her, but you know, working with Jan Vendor and her experience with the election director for the state, you know, maybe he could be the problem who's not letting her get the information. And so what we are planning, and me and Jan had a long talk today, and is that we're getting ready to file records requests in Michigan aimed at all of the counties, and we're asking for the images of the last election. It's going to be an educational type document records request because a lot of them don't know they even exist. You know, when me and Chris went up there, then me and Steve, when me and Chris were up there at first, we were meeting with the election directors in small counties because that's where I like to start. They had no idea that the images even existed, which is really strange. And what's strange is in Michigan, the counties do the programming of the election management system. And they don't really do it. They have somebody else do it, like the vendor or a subcontractor to the vendor. And then they produce the thumb drives and they give it to the municipalities. And the municipalities stick this in their machines. And all they do is run a logic and accuracy test. That's it. And you know, a logic and accuracy test, you've heard me say before, only proves that the equipment's working right at this moment. There could be an Easter egg. It turns out to be a fraction magic program that goes off. It is.
Okay, so John, the point is,
go ahead, I'm sorry.
The point is that in Michigan, where we should be reasonably secure, even the Democratic governor and the Democratic Secretary of State are providing answers that make absolutely no sense.
Yeah, and it's probably one of the worst of the 18 states, 19 states I've been in. That's how bad it is, okay?
And this
because
is a Democrat, this is a state
Steve were there, and Steve ought to jump on this. We looked as hard as we can to get to the EMS, the election management system. We couldn't get it. What they do is they push a button and it sends the results from everywhere to this hidden place, okay? And really, I don't know if it's some fat guy on a couch, okay, who's receiving and changing the results. It's that bad.
It's been a great call. I'm thrilled we got through the transition. Thank you again, Dr. Paul, for all your great work getting going. Thank you, Mike Hirsch, for bringing us up. Do spread. We did this without passwords by identifying everybody. We can continue to do that until somebody starts yelling. But let's continue. Spread the password around. Try and know who you're the link around. Try and know who you're sending it to. We will definitely meet again next week. We will cover it again as we usually do. The details state by state. They turn out to be very, very important. This breakthrough in California is huge, even though it's not a swing state. And we will next week talk to all the organizations we can and get updated again. And thank you very much, everybody. No more stolen elections.
Well, we bit that apple and the garden was lost, and so we had to work to pay the cost. And so we went digging into the ground and started to burn many things we found. But don't you know we're gonna have a Solartopia, Solartopia, Solartopia. Don't you know we're gonna have a Solartopia all over God's green world.
Well, we multiplied, we needed more. The rich got rich, the poor got sore. The fuel ran scarce, the price jumped high, and so they gave nuclear power a try. But
don't you know we're gonna have a Solartopia, Solartopia, Solartopia. Don't you know we're gonna have a Solartopia all over God's green world. But the nuclear plants were built in haste, with too many risks and no place for waste. And so from Seabrook to Shoreham town, we have to shut those new plants down. But don't you know we're gonna have a Solartopia, Solartopia, Solartopia. Don't you know we're gonna have a Solartopia all over God's green world.
Now we're fighting wars over oil and gas. No matter who wins, it will not last. The earth is scarred, the planet is warming. Don't you think that all of it's a great big warning?
Don't you know we're gonna have a Solartopia,